Hi folks, welcome back. I hope you're all doing well. Today I want to take a quick look at a study which looks at the question of how we should teach programming to young children. And more specifically, the question is, when starting to teach them programming, is it better to start with or without the computer? That is, in plugged or unplugged mode. And what exactly do we mean by better? The specific things we're looking for are understanding of programming concepts, improving a student's sense of self-efficacy when programming, and motivating the students to explore and use a wide variety of programming constructs when implementing their assignments. Self-efficacy is basically the belief or the self-confidence that one can do things to achieve a desired outcome or to solve a problem. And it plays a very important role in education. The cool thing about this paper is that the authors were actually able to do a controlled randomized study to examine this question. They took 35 elementary school children between the ages of 8 to 12, assigned them to two random groups, and taught them for 8 weeks, where one group was taught using unplugged programming materials, whereas the other group used plugged programming materials on the computer itself. And after this initial phase, both of these groups were taught some Scratch. Scratch is a very popular programming framework which uses blocks and connections between blocks to teach programming to children. Both kinds of lessons covered all the same basic programming concepts like loops, conditionals, procedures, sending messages, parallelization, variables, and so on. Self-efficacy was measured using a standard questionnaire, so it was self-reported. So what did they find? After the full instruction was over, both groups were tested, and they found that there was no difference in understanding programming concepts between these two groups, between the plugged and unplugged group. However, that's not the end of the story. There are some other interesting differences, as we'll see. What the authors found was that the unplugged group was significantly higher than the plugged group when it came to self-efficacy scores at the end of the course. The other big difference showed up in their programming vocabulary. The children in the unplugged group used a larger number of distinct Scratch blocks to solve their problems than the children in the plugged group. So that's a really interesting difference, and why might that be? And the authors have some guesses. One hypothesis is just the difference in the classroom environment between the plugged and unplugged scenarios. When kids are playing with computers, they often get distracted by the computer itself. As the authors here note, in the unplugged group, the classroom was calmer, and perhaps that allowed the children to focus more on mastering the underlying concepts. Now, as we saw, the students in the unplugged group both had higher self-efficacy scores and also used a larger vocabulary of Scratch programming blocks. And this might be related, as the authors hypothesize here. If the students are more self-confident in their understanding, they will find it more comfortable to explore and use a wider variety of Scratch blocks. They found that the unplugged group used blocks that were not covered in the lessons, so they did feel comfortable exploring things that had not explicitly been taught to them. So that was a quick look at a controlled randomized experiment to see whether plugged or unplugged modes of instruction are more effective when teaching elementary school children how to program. I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you next time. Thank you.